Hey everyone, welcome to the week of September 14th through the 18th. Today we are moving on from main idea and we are going to start a new lesson on inferences. So today you're going to want to make sure you have a pen or a pencil and a paper and some notebooks or anything that you usually use to take your notes on. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We have 5 vocabulary words that we're going to be focusing on today. We have inference, prediction, infer, imply, and evidence. What I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to pause the video for here and write down these 5 words. Before we start talking about what they mean, I'd like for you to make your own guesses for these words. Have you seen them before? And if you have, where have you seen them? How would we use them in a sentence? So go ahead and stop the video and write down your vocabulary words and your ideas. All right, so now that you've written down your vocabulary words, let's talk about what they actually mean. We are going to start talking about the words inference and infer. So inference, if you notice, has the word infer inside of it. That means that these 2 words are related to one another. They're just different parts of speech. What I mean by this, let's think about that word walk. Walk and walking mean essentially the same thing. They are just different parts of speech. The same thing happens here with infer and inference. Infer is an action, which means that it is a verb. And inference is the thing that you make when you infer. So it is a thing, which makes it a noun. So we're going to talk about these words in just a second, and we're going to start with inference. So what is inference? We are going to say that an inference is a decision that is the result of evidence from the reading and your own background knowledge. Now, this is a really long definition, and what does it actually mean? We want to treat inferences kind of like a math problem. What I mean by this is that you take what is written inside of the text and you put it together with the information that you already know. And we call what you already know your prior knowledge. So what we're saying is that as you read, you want to be thinking about what you already know about the topic. And we've kind of talked about that idea already. For a good definition, and this is something that we should write down, we are going to say that an inference is an educated guess based off of the text. And I just realized that I made a spelling error here. This should say an educated guess. So let's talk about this for a minute. When I make a guess, I know that I am trying to choose an answer that I may not already have a 100% answer for. And I know that if I'm making an educated guess, I'm making a guess that best fits the information that I already know. I could randomly guess, and I would just be saying, I'm going to pick C every time that I answer a question. That's pretty random. What we want to do is we want to be making educated guesses. That means we are choosing the option that makes sense based off of the things that I read and based off of the things that I know. Inferences, they are not directly stated in the text. If something is directly stated in the text, that means it is a piece of evidence. So when we talk about evidence, we want to say that evidence is proof. The easiest way that I have to think about evidence is by thinking about crime shows. When we watch crime shows, what we are doing is seeing that the police officers, the detectives are trying to prove that a person is innocent or guilty, and they do that by finding evidence. So evidence is something that we find directly in the text, and what it does is it helps us to prove our inference. It proves that our inference or our guess is correct. So that's what an inference is. And remember that inference is also related to that word infer, that both of these things go together. So the next thing we want to talk about is the difference between imply and infer. Now, last week when we talked about main idea, we had talked about imply as well. So imply, we said, comes with the word implication as well. And we said that when you imply something, what the author is doing is suggesting. My example was in class. When I suggest something to you, I might say, I think you should go back and check out question number 3. I'm suggesting that the author or that the answer for question number 3 is wrong, but I'm not actively telling you that. So what I'm doing is suggesting. So we want to remember that the author's job is to imply. They are suggesting something. As a reader, it is our job to infer. That means we are making guesses about the information that we're reading. So we want to say that the difference here is that the author implies. They are suggesting something. The reader, on the other hand, infers. They are making an educated guess about what the author is suggesting. Another way to read this sentence is to say that it is an educated guess based off of what the author is implying. So we can use that vocabulary word instead of suggesting. Now, these two words kind of get blurred together a little bit. They mean similar things, but the difference is who does them. Remember, keep in mind that the author's job is to imply and the reader's job is to infer. So how do we use these? How do we use these tools? First thing we want to talk about is the time that we actually infer. So any of the words that you see in red here, these are verbs, so they are action words, that are going to tell you what you should be doing. Anytime you see these words, what the question is really asking for you to do is infer. A lot of times when we read test questions, they're designed to trick you. So what we want to remember is that whenever we see these, all that they're asking us to do is to make a guess. They're asking us to guess about the information presented. I want to take a minute and I want to focus on the bottom two here. So the first one says, with which would the author agree? And the second one says, which sentence would the author most likely use? Anytime you are dealing with the author, what we want to remember is that we don't know that person. So anytime you're asked what the author thinks, feels, or believes, what that question is really asking you to do is to make an inference. It is asking you to guess about what the author believes, thinks, or feels. We don't know that person, so we're never going to be 100% sure. It's just up to us to make a good guess. So let's do a little bit of practice. We are going to practice a couple of different slides here. And what I want you to notice is that for each practice slide, you're going to see a little bit in bold and a little bit that is not in bold. The things in bold are the readings themselves, and the unbolded words are the questions that go along with it. Remember that we need to tap into our prior knowledge to be able to do these. So here's our first example. I have voted the same way for years. It's the first time I've ever voted for the Green Party, said one Alabama voter. My question is, using inference and prior knowledge, which party would you conclude that this voter previously voted for? So this is kind of my question. Who did they vote for? Which party did the voter previously vote for? So I want to think about all of my prior knowledge. My prior knowledge includes what I know about political parties. I know that there are major parties, and I know that there are minor parties. So when I think of something major, I think of something large. So a major party, the United States has two. We have the Democratic Party, and we have the Republican Party. I also know that there are a lot of minor political parties as well. The Green Party, which was mentioned in our reading, I also know that I can register as independent. We have things like the Socialist Party and the Communist Party. The reason that these are called minor parties is because they have less people inside of them. So when I come back to my example here, I really think that this person had to come from a major party, since that's where most of the people that vote come from. The other clue that I see in this reading is Alabama. I know that historically, states in the South vote Republican. So my inference then is that this voter previously voted as a Republican. And I know that that is a true answer. So here is our second example. His previous album was one of the year's bestsellers, but it paled in comparison with his 1982 follow-up thriller. Who can you reasonably infer is the singer of this album? Pull from your previous knowledge. Well, this one for me has two clues. The first is the title Thriller. I know that that is a Michael Jackson song. The other thing that I see is the 1982. That is the time when Michael Jackson was a top artist. So my answer then is going to be Michael Jackson.